Hello, Shiv Kumar Ji.
Sir.
Shiv Kumar.
Sir, I have sent the link.
Connection, YouTube connection.
Ready, let us start. Hello, ready? ഇതൊന്നും കേൾക്കാത്ത മൈക്ക് പോക്ക ഓണല്ലേ? പിന്നെന്താ? റെഡിയാണ് ഉള്ളത്. ബദൽസ് റെഡി ഇവിടെ കാണിക്കുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ. ഹലോ പ്രൊഫസർ റെഡ്ഡി. ഇവിടെ വലിയ പ്രശ്നമാക്കണ്ടല്ലോ ഇത്. ഏത് അതിന് കാര്യം ചെയ്താൽ മതി. വേണമെങ്കിൽ അപ്പുറത്തെ മെസ്സേജ് ചെയ്തു. റെഡി പ്രൊഫസർ റെഡ്ഡി. എന്ത് എന്തിനാ?
Hello, Raghavanji. Hello. Hello, Raghavan.
Okay, I am here. Let us begin.
Hello, Raghavanji.
Yeah.
Oh, അത് വെച്ചുണ്ട്.
എന്നെ 23 ആളെ ആയിട്ടുള്ളൂ. അതിനേഴ് ആയിട്ടുള്ളൂ. 23 ആണെന്ന് ഇതിൻ്റെ അകത്ത് കാണിക്കുന്നു. Yeah, good evening to everybody.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, our Reddy has earphone has some problems, so he will join with us after a few minutes. So we don't want to wait him. So I am directly entering into our workshop without any introduction or anything. So yesterday we were talking about this folklore during the period of popular antiquities. In the beginning, it was known as popular antiquities, and at that time, what was the attitude of those who engaged with that subject, and the area of when we talk about the disciplines like those things, and then we had to tell about it area, the data of the subject, and the attitude towards that data, and the way of methodology and the objectives also. So we were talking about all those things this during the period of these popular antiquities. Now let us come to the folklore. During those periods, in the early period of this one, popular antiquities, and later in 1846, the new terminology entered in the scene. And accordingly, the kind of attitude towards the subject got new approach. I think that actually this approach also got some change. So, as I told earlier, during the period of popular antiquities, the area of study, that means data for the popular antiquities, was as vast as the traditional life. It was not restricted to oral tradition. But when other disciplines recognized the folklore as a discipline that not discipline, as a subject of study that deals with the oral tradition of different cultures, that is a folk culture, not so that division has happened because during the popular antiquities, whether it is tribal or folk or civilized society, what all tradition that they have, it is part of the popular antiquities, that as a material, as a data, as well as what all studies happened on those days. But when it became folklore, it was restricted in two ways. One is this tradition. All traditions are not folklore. The tradition that related or this oral tradition only considered as folklore. Not only that, the people know by that time it was divided, the whole humanity is divided into three. That is primitive, barbaric, and civilized. So popular antiquities dealt with all these societies. So there is no demarcation between these three groups. Whatever tradition that they have on those days, whether it is from tribal, rural, or city, they used to consider it as tradition and it is part of popular antiquities. But when this folk, that term folk has come, then folklore is the lore of the folk. So Then we had to define what is the lore. That is the problem with folklore. That is, what is lore of, as far as the subject is concerned, this word is a compound word. In the beginning, it was written as this with this folk and lore. In between, there is a mark, but it's called, I forgot that name. Then it was wrote without that as folk as an adjective of the lore. In the beginning, it was not like that. When we put a small line in between two words, it has its own meaning. How to understand that now equality is there. That folk and lore are equal. And later, what happened to that is folk and lore, they wrote folk a separate word and lore the next word. Then it is, as you know, it is an adjective. Folk is an adjective of lore. That is why during those periods, everybody wanted to define folklore as lore of the folk. And then we had to define, they had to define both terms. That is, who are the folk? And the next part, lore. So importance is, as it is an adjective, folk is an adjective, then lore got this, never got prominent. The prominent part is lore, the study of the lore. So study of the lore of whom? Lore of folk. Then this definition, this limited this the scope of the subject. That is, lore is considered as oral tradition, and folk is considered as in the evolutionary, this concept. This is in between tribal society and civilized society. That is who are in the village. That is why later also there's Richard M. Dawson and so many people used to say that it is the peasant community. Who is folk means it is peasant community. So that is defined in early days. It was defined like this. They were trying to define this. They never considered this folklore as a single word. Folklore, they wanted to these two words together. One is that's proper noun, and the other one is adjective of that proper noun. So naturally, folklore became the study of the lore. And the next question, whose lore? Then that answer, they gave in the early, our scholars gave the answer that it is the folk. And later, lore, the both got changed later. That I think we will consider in the next slide. So what happened yesterday, I was telling about this definition mostly by anthropologist Maria Leach in her book. She quoted all these definitions, and those definitions says that it is oral tradition of the peasant community or the folk. So this limitation has happened as far as folklore is concerned as a subject of study. So next one. Then, as it is limited to orality, as you know, there's in a peasant community, in tribal society, most of the 90% of their culture is a part of orality. The other thing is action-oriented, performance-oriented, or action-oriented thing. In a peasant community, that is folk community, this percentage is still minimized. Orality is there, but more other kind of lore in that community also. So this happened, no? Folklore in the due course, as you examine the history of folklore studies and the attitude towards folklore, later they use the word without this a single word. Consider that it's a concept, not a compound word. Folklore became without a gap, no spaces in between folk and lore. Folklore became a concept instead of two words, a compound word. That two words with adjective and not compound word, and then adjective and a proper noun. Instead of that, they merged together and became a single word. Not we can we had to call as concept. Folklore became a concept. Then the problem still, I think during this postmodern, in the beginning of postmodern also, this problem was haunting the folklore, the area of folklore study. That is why, as far as we are concerned, this the definition given by Alan Dennis was so important. Still, he was asking the question, who are the folk? In terms of folk, he wanted to look at folklore. So that it was the fate of this discipline, ill fate of this discipline. They can't escape from that particular term, folk. So that I'm not going there in the during this modern period. This maybe in the early 20th century, how they looked at folklore. And they wanted to define folklore also. So they defined, I didn't take all the people who defined folklore. There is some landmark. Only those people I referred here. That is definition by Richard M. Dawson. His attitude was very important because he was trying in his book, Folklore and Folklife. In the beginning, he was trying to define folklore and he was in vain to define that subject, and he himself was telling that it is very difficult to define folklore. So, what all comprises folklore? What all come under folklore? I am giving a list, a long list he is giving, that this is the folklore. These are that means it's a generic attitude. The genre decides the discipline, the subject as in the definition of the subject. He is more considered about this peasant community. That is, he already accepted that, and he wanted to tell that folklore is the importance of folklore is this lore, not folk. So he was giving this a long list of genres, which is part of the lore. So folklore is the study of the lore. Then he didn't give much importance to deal with this peasant community, even though he was his definition was he wanted to say that it is a peasant folk, is peasant community, and therefore their lore is this one. And later, that is why there is a difference. They used to differ in a different way. They looked at, especially Dawson and others looked at folklore in a different way. And that is why they felt that there is a difference between folklore and folk life. Folklore is the lore by itself. Life is so vast. And that is why his book titled as Folklore and Folk Life. Not only that, even in the last of second half of the 20th century, this from America, the newsletter came in the same title, Folk Life, not Folklore. So that kind of an attitude was there, that whether it is folk life and folklore is the same, or but then we had to think about that. What is the difference between folk life and folklore? Folk life is a generic concept. We have so many genres, like oral tradition. In oral tradition, you have myth, legend, and folk tale, and main thing, proverb and this riddle, and you have action on the. Now, by that time, the thing is that by that time, Dawson was giving this kind of definition. This kind of definition, already it was that oral tradition, folklore is only oral tradition which was insisted by. Let us say that by 1924, I think it is 1924 that Maria Lee's book published, I think, first time, then again published, new edition has come in 1943, I think. So, I don't know, I am not sure about that year. Anyway, in the first half of this 20th century, we were talking about anthropologists and even folklorists were considering this folklore as oral tradition. That is why this dictionary of folklore, mythology, and legend giving this definition. But you see, then also, folklore comprises all other genres also. That is why Dawson was giving such a long list, not only for oral tradition. So that division is also, we had a, when we go to this Maria Leach's book, you get a classification of folklore. We classified the folklore into different categories, that is in the same pattern, same technique that he used, the library cataloging system, giving the number in this the decimal numbers, that each category has a prime number, then its subsection gets a point, like that, 0, 0, like that. He wanted to get cataloging that folklore and a cataloging system. So Dawson divided the folklore into, that's why I wanted to mention that, because this 4 category, he put it into 4 category. That category says that this oral folklore, then material culture is there, beliefs and customs are there, and one more, this these things, and I don't remember exactly. It's 4 categories.
Performing arts.
Yeah.
Performing arts.
Yeah, performing arts. It's action oriented. And some other scholars define the same, took the same concept and defined in another way, that action oriented, mendifact, artifact, sociofact, like that. Some other authors also, but no difference between these things. That, when we look in the history of folklore and the definition of folklore and its evolution, that categorization is a very, very crucial role, because he denied that folklore is not restricted, cannot be restricted in the oral tradition, but these everything that is action oriented, that is performance, any kind of performance, then whatever it may be. So the knowledge system, belief system, another category, and what else? That means concrete and abstract thing, even abstract thing also come under folklore study. That was in the history of folkloristics. Folklore, the definition gets different. Now this change through Dawson. That was the importance of Dawson as far as folklore, the evolution of folklore is concerned. He, by that definition, by that categorization, he was trying to elaborate this, extended the horizon of folklore, which was restricted to oral tradition, or it was forced to restrict it on oral tradition. It as life, as vast as life of the folk. But still, he was sitting on this folk. According to him, it is peasant community. That is why he was coming with that I will talk a little bit later, coming with the folklore, that we have to discuss that separately, but only mentioning here. So that is why he was so particular about that idea. We brought that idea, that folklore, because he was thinking about the folk, and folk, it is the sacredness of folk, their culture, their attitude, everything is sacred, yes, as far as Dawson is concerned. And the first definition, not actually definition given by Alan Dulles in the early days, he didn't come as such with a definition, but the same idea that is forwarded by this Dawson, he was also following the same in the early period. But when the time has passed, he came with another definition. So there is no difference between Dawson's attitude and this one. You see, this Alan Dundas' attitude in the beginning, but he came with another very scientific definition, but I don't know how we can consider in the evolution of the folkloristics whether it is positive or negative. That is, we had to assess. That definition says that folk is he was trying to. That is the problem with Alan Dundas. He was little bit confused with the idea, the folklore. He still, even though folklore became written as a single word and a concept, still he was demarcating folk from the word folk and lore. There is a demarcation. That is why he was telling that we had to define folk in terms of lore and lore in terms of folk. That is the better way to understand what is folklore. So, who are now folk? Folk is define particular folk in terms of their lore. A particular group of people unite together, living together, and they communicate together, share something, same traits of culture or folklore, and they are considered as a folk. That is why sharing is very, very important. In the beginning also sharing, that is the these disciplines. I think essence of this idea is that sharing. So those who are sharing the same tradition, they are called as folk. Then how we can define? Then we can define lore. Lore is what all a group of people sharing, what all they share among themselves. That can be considered as a lore. So it is a definition that a group of people who are sharing some kind of lore among themselves. Then that sharing, those people who are sharing, the group of people who share themselves this lore are considered as folk. And the lore can be defined in terms of the folk. That means a group of people, why they wanted to say that they are a group, because they are sharing the same features, sharing same lore, that considered as lore. So the thing is that there is now we had to understand this in another way. Then there is I think there is even Alan Dundas, they didn't discuss that area much. There is that brings an idea that folklore is not a generic one as such. So yes, Orson was so strict about that. Lore is nothing but genres. So that is why he wanted to say like that. But as far as the Hernandez is concerned, he was more concerned about the sharing habit of the people. What they share, it is lore. Who share that? That is folk. That is his definition. What they share, maybe he was not so particular about the lore, but his major works are based on this channels, because he was trying to understand. As a teacher, as an academician, he was trying to give this knowledge that was imparted by various scholars all over the world, and he wanted to take that all those theories and apply that different, in certain cases he himself applied those theories on his own data, what all data he collected, almost all theories. But in other cases, he came forward with this case studies. Case studies means a data is the same on a particular definite specific data, different theories available on those days in folklore. He divided that, given that to each and every scholar, and the same data is studied by them through the different methodology. So he came with maybe this evil eye. That evil eye, different approaches. What all approaches available on those days in academic arena, he gave those things to different scholars. Psychoanalysis is there, and structural analysis is there, and so many number of, not only this one, data may be the same, but each author collected data from different sources, not the same data. Even though the genre is the same, they collect data from their own zone and they apply, but the data is basically one genre. Maybe this kind of case studies, so many case studies he has done. So that was its this academically, when we evaluate what Alan Dundas has done, he was trying to bring all theories that is developed in the field of folklore, put together and try to analyze that in various data. That means in his inductive method of research. It was his contribution as far as when we consider his work, one contribution. But in the case of definition, that is, folk can be any group. That's the difference between Dawson and Allendendes. He never talk about tribal group or barbaric group or civilized group or folk. He says that if some individuals, a group, make a group, they behave as a group on the basis of some tradition that is shared by tradition that are shared by that group, particular group, then they can be considered as a folk. And what they share traditionally, that is lore. That was its definition. So it's a liberation from strictness and strict definition that has been given to. It was the first time that moving from the folk, the concept of folk, a serious change happened. That folk can be any group, not peasant community, not tribal community. Even that is why urban folklore also can be. That is why, because of this definition, later we came with urban folklore and tribal folklore. Any group of people, if the only condition is that they have to share themselves some tradition. And in that also he was telling that theoretically, not in reality it is something else. Theoretically, that group consists of at least more than one. Then it can be considered as a group, because communication system, it is not self, more than one. Who can be, two people can be a group if they share traditionally some lore. Then the other part about the lore also, this one, what they share among themselves. Then he was telling about the tradition. He was a little bit silent about tradition. He was telling that the tradition can be a long tradition, that many 1,000 years, but even 2-3 years, a group of people can create a new tradition. So that also will be part of folklore. So this is the change that has brought by the Allendendes in the field of as far as definition is concerned. So this is the second definition he put forward. Then we have Dan Ben Amos, but Dan Ben Amos, when we consider whether we consider here or this postmodern, part of the postmodern, also it is in between this the work of Dan Ben Amos. When we consider his work, we had to put it in both. Its one leg is in this modern period, and its other leg is in the postmodern period. When you talk about the folklore in context, then we have to say that it is something, the postmodern thought, part of postmodern thought, not fully. So it is a deviation from earlier definition given by Dawson or Allendendes. So that deviation, that means folklore in context, that was this major idea that brought out from what decided folklore. It is the context is the deciding factor, not the text. When we consider genre as text, means the text genre as the subject of folklore, then we are considering the text as the core. Text decides the discipline. But he says that not text. Text is nothing but text get meaning, function, everything according to the context. So context is very, very important, and context is more than this text. And text and context you get only in a coherence only. That also happens. So Dan Ben Amos brought this idea that his definition was artistic communication among small group. Why he didn't tell about these type things? That's why now when we look into this definition, immediately after the period when which it has come, this is the postmodern beginning of postmodern period that he put forward this idea. So folklore is moving from the text, from genre, that is the core of the subject. It moves from coming out from the genre, and the text, genre is the text. Text is not the deciding factor, but the context. And text and context together, living in a culture, living in a folk. So that is his idea. Then he was talking about communication, artistic communication. It's a communication system. You see, we have three scholars, this young Turks, that is Roger Abraham and this Dan Ben Amos, one more person is there. As far as Roger Abraham is concerned, he is more inclined towards performance theory. He put forward, came forward the creolization of this culture and the folklore also. That is his one of the major contribution that he had. He studied so many folklore from these African countries, and he put forward with some new idea. So he was basically performance theory. Performance theory says that performance itself, text itself with the distant context also. Text with the context as not only the context and distant context also together. So a performance is like that. That it's, you can't consider a genre, a text as genre and study those things. Then let us think about the scholars that these scholars, what we are doing. We are doing the same old way, that taking genre and all the PhD thesis that the topic that gives, it is generic. Maybe proverb, maybe most of the cases it is oral tradition, that is maybe ballads and epics. Rarely in India, proverbs and other things. And why that happens? Even though this idea has developed in the field of folklore, we are least bothered about these things. And what happened to this text? That means, in another term, text is not any equal. It is not a synonym. Text has its own connotations. For the time being, I am telling like that, text and genre. When a genre is a conceptual thing that come under so many texts together, a similar text together, bringing the idea, bringing the concept, that particular genre. Ballad is a genre, but a ballad, you never get a ballad by itself. You get ballads, so many ballads in your culture that has its own native terms also. But you don't get a ballad as such, because ballad is a concept. So that is the problem with this. So what you collect from the field is the text. that text represents a jara, and that text is brought out of the context, and we are imposing so many things on that, and that we consider this is folklore studies or something. But Dorsen says, Dan Benamos says that it is not like that. It is not. No, it's a communication system. It is actually it is bridging a bridge between Allenden's thought and this later performance theory, performance studies. There is a bridge. He created a bridge in between these two. That is what is genre actually. That is Allenden has also concentrated on that, and the new concept of this one, that is performance theory and other things. Actually, whatever we get, not only the text, the whole thing. Text is, or we can say that when we go to the performance theory, text is redefined as text with context. What is the text of that performance? Then we had to say that it is not the given text that we collected from the field, but we collected that in a real living situation. We had to get that living situation also with the text. Then that is the context. So text get a new elaboration, new idea, it becomes a new concept that text is, in as far as Dan Benamos is concerned, text is nothing but text with context. Otherwise, text has no life. That is the problem with Dan Benamos. That is why he wanted to say that it is artistic communication. No, that communication, why that word communication has come? The whole, what is the prime function of folklore? That is communication. That is why the earlier definition, even in the time of popular antiquities itself, when we talk about tradition is it is handed over from earlier generation to new generation. The communication system is basically this one generation to other generation, or it's a vertical one. That movement is a vertical one. That transference is a vertical one. So this happens. Then in the early days of folklore, we considered that folklore always travels, the transfers, get transfer from early generation. That means in the history, early days, prior to this generation. And it moves from there to present generation. And present generation, I am not using the word folk. Present generation wanted to communicate that to the coming generation. So this is the way the folklore transfers. So it is a vertical communication. So that vertical communication, what happens? He was silent about this. Dan Benamos was silent about this vertical communication, because by that time, when we look into the postmodern thought, that is what happens to this one, this vertical to horizontal, as Sudhakar Reddy was telling on those in his this class, that linear progression and the multilinear, unilinear progression and multilinear progression. So that happens. There is a center and it goes everywhere. So that kind of horizontal movement, that x-axis and y-axis, it happens. So this vertical communication, so far we were talking about vertical communication, while Allenden does also little bit, hesitant to say like that. But when it reaches Dan Benamos, that communication, any kind of communication, whether it is vertical or horizontal, when it travels from one place to another, that is horizontal communication. From one group of people to another group of communication, because Alan has already told that within 2-3 years you get a tradition, and you get a group of people who share them among themselves, getting a tradition. So that, if that is so, it is a continuation of that thought. Then when Amos also influenced by this one, and he says that not only this vertical communication, that is generation to generation, but communication, new text has been created, can be created by horizontal communication, horizontal movement also. This folklore can be migrated from one place to another, and it moves, it takes shape, it works within the society, within that particular society, and according to that society, it develop a new text out of that text. So this is the difference between this Alan Dundas this definition, but it is a continuation. We can see that there is a string from Dorson to Alan Dundas, and Alan Dundas, Dan Ben Amos, and with Adam Dorson, this Roger Abraham. So what happens by this time? This postmodern thought is in the air, in the atmosphere. That also they influence them. That we have to consider in a separate way. So Roger Abraham also, that he was basically a performance theory. He was worked in performance. He interested in performance, and in that way he was trying to understand folklore mostly. But he didn't give any strict definition for folklore as Alan Dundas or Dan Ben Amos done. Then when Dan Ben Amos definition says that it is but communication, it's an artistic communication among small group. You see that small group, not macro, it's a micro. So why he told like that? Because in the beginning, it is the time when this globalization was not, at that time it was not like that, but that postmodern thought was in the air. So this, as we mentioned as grand narratives. Instead of that, there are small groups. They communicate among themselves. This small group, it is basically, at that time, when he gave that kind of a definition, geographical group also, not the aerial folk, only geographical group, that people living together, and they make small group, and they communicate in a symbolic way, not direct like thing. It's artistic. That is why he was so particular about artistic communication, because we have so many communication systems that scientific technological way of the communication system was so much in our life, and we had to differentiate. He wanted to differentiate that kind of communication from this folklore communication. That is why he wanted two things. That is, it is artistic. Aesthetical sense is there. That is why not only functional. You see, when a folk, part of a folk, when somebody make a basket, it is a functional one. In the life, they use the basket. But a basket coming from industry and a basket coming from the folk is different, because it has its aesthetic sense inside that basket. It is without the knowledge of the particular person who created that particular basket, his imprint, not his, his society's imprint, his community's imprint is in that basket. That is why he says that it is artistic communication. That is also shared one. And among a small group, it is an artifact. It is not, folklore is not a fact that is communicated to all over the world. It is meant for small groups, no, ideologically. Now we can see that the difference, why he wanted to say like that. Because it is that time had this postmodern thought and this globalization was in the air. And he wanted to know communication system, so many communication system, man becomes universal being. In such a situation, he wanted to differentiate these such a large societies and small grouping. This small grouping is called folk. And their communication system in a not fully technical, it is little bit artistic. Without the knowledge of them, consciousness of them, their imprint is there. Maybe sometimes this alienation theory also worked in Dan Ben-Amos, this one, I think. So I don't want to go in detail for that. So now, Roger Abraham, I don't want to give more. Next one. Yeah. Then attitude towards folklore during this period. What is the attitude? I was telling about these different definitions and different these things, and now group identity. So during this period, modern period, slowly this feeling of group identity, it was considered as something more valuable, and in that way we looked at this folklorists looked at this folklore, and the studies also came in such a way. And as far as group identity, when we talk about the group identity, Allender's definition was so particular about that group identity. And Dan Ben-Amos' definition also emphasis given to group identity. So slowly that means what is the objective? It is even though they didn't say directly that the objectives of folklore studies, folkloristics or folklore studies is this, but their definition and their attitude towards folklore says that. No, from that one we can assume that they are moving towards a group, that such a cognition that folklore is having this group identity. So slowly they wanted to, what is the aim and objectives of folklore? Then they wanted to say that it is a group, to find out the group identity of the people. That is why I will come later, I think, second definition of this one. That is why Alvin Dundas came with the third definition. That is, he was not giving a direct definition of as he has done in the earlier one. He gave, like the who are the folk. In an article, he asked the question, who are the folk? Then he answered himself that we are the folk among others. So this definition, that definition actually saying what is the, no, actually implies that the objective of folklore study as far as he is concerned, that is group identity. Why do you want to study folklore? To understand the identity of a particular group of people. So here what happens, you know, there are, even though we consider folklore as a single concept, that word too, compound word, that is folk and lore. This thing, at this juncture also, at this context also, it works. Then there are two parts of lore and folk. This is the dilemma that we have been facing since the term folklore has given by this William Jones, William J. Thoms, not William Jones, William J. Thoms. Whether we wanted to study lore or whether we wanted to understand the community, the society, the group that share this lore. So two possibilities are there. One is you can study the lore, its function, its structure, or its aesthetics, and so many things. A lot of problem that you can put on that, and you can find out answer for that, and that kind of a study is usually in Indian situation. What we are doing, this one, we never consider about this society. We never consider about the folk. We collect data of particular genre from a particular society, particular group. That means you are collecting the text, not genre, text of a genre, particular text of a genre, and just elaborating that, just giving description most of the cases. That means that is also possible. And explanatory also can be possible. Why that? And so many questions you can throw towards this lore, and you can find out this one. But another possibility is that there is a folk behind that. They created this lore, not merely for fun. Yes, part of the life, part of the struggle that they have been all the time, they have been contradicted with. That is why they renovated, renewing in new text out of the single text. From a single text gets so many texts one after another. Why do they create that different text? We never ask such question. That is the question asked and now answered by Levi Strauss. That is why I wanted to say like that. Why? Why people creating so many texts from one text? Because without reason, it's a tradition. They don't want to change that. So they create new text one after another. That means, as far as Dan Ben Amos is concerned, because this context got changed, contextual pressure made them to get new text one after another. Whenever context get a change, there is no other way. They had to find out a new text out of that earlier text. So these going together. But the main problem is that whether we wanted to look at two possibilities. That is, you can study this lore without considering the folk. And there can be a study. That possibility also is there, that you can try to understand what is the problem with that particular folk, a group of people to create such a text. Why? And why subtext also have been created, so many subtext and later each subtext becomes a single text and a text behind a particular group. They deviated from the earlier group, and they feel themselves that they are independent and out of this expressive forms. How do we express that we are independent? A group by independent group, by expression. What is that expression of the folk? That is this law. So that is why not that that is not the same, not the exact thing. You see, when 1989, after 1989, this so many committees have discussed these things internationally, and they were talking about instead of folklore, they have been talking about the folklore expressions instead of folklore. They have their own the aims before that we will discuss later. Why they wanted to say that instead of folklore expression. Maybe after 1990, they wanted to, they created a new word, that folklore expression. So it has a political implication also. I will come later when we talk about this. There is a session only for that international interference of on folklore. That on those part we can discuss all those things. Anyway, this is the thing that happened. What happens to the thing? The main thing is that there was in the history of folkloristics, evolution of the history of the folkloristics as an folklore as an academic discipline. There is a move after 1980, maybe 75 onwards, to inquire into the main objective of the folklore study is towards this folk, to understand the folk. Why do they create this folklore? Why do they create a new text out of earlier text? These such questions we had to ask, and they asked and they found out reasons for that also. So that is the thing. Then that is group identity. That is when Allen Enders, his last definition. After that, he never gave a definition as such. In that definition, he asked the question, who are the folk? And we are the folk among others. That was his answer. So it was congruent to the definition of identity. He was the same idea he put inside folkloristics. Then he wanted to say that we had to understand the folk, because lore is lore is the creation of the folk according to structural pressure, contextual pressure, as Dan Benamos says. So the prime importance is to know the folk and their direction of development, also direction of life change also is the main objective of folklore. That is happened. Then methodologically, this something happened in folklore. How you are going to learn and doing research, you create knowledge out of folklore. That view of one's own lore. Now, during these early days, on whether it is sociology, anthropology, or any other discipline in social science, they wanted to know, other people wanted to study on some other group. That is why people on colonial period, people from Europe traveled to all over the country, and they studied different cultures. No, that is why in the last class I was telling session that I was telling that it is a view of the civilized on barbaric or the primitive. That was the attitude, and that was the methodologically that affects the methodology also. But when folklore get these such ideas, incorporated these such modern idea, then naturally it's a view of one's own lore. People used to analyze their own folklore. So this is considered, I think, Lori Hongo also, when we talk about the folklore process, in between 21 process, folklore getting different stages and going through, moving through towards this today, now moving towards evolution, evolutionary process. It has at a stage, people wanted to look at, they have to recognize their own folklore and they wanted to study their own folklore and not only learn these such things and they disseminate these such things. So that is a view of one's own lore. This is a methodological problem. How to understand a community? It has its own problem that if you have some bias of your own community, then that also affects the study. That's also this problem of research methodology, that the attitude of the subject, that is a reflexivity. We call as reflexivity research in this research philosophy. We used to say that reflexivity will be there. So here also this happens. So this is the problem that then during this period, even though this is there, still generic, no escape from that. All the study, this whether Allen Enders or Dan Ben Amos, they were talking about the genres, not even intergeneric reality, even because folklore is not a airtight. A genre is not airtight one compartment. It is some part of the message. Everything is for communication among the people. That communication is possible because it is power politics are very strong in these societies, whether Western or Eastern or Indian or Kerala. We have our own system and power politics plays, and then it is very difficult to communicate in a single genre, because power plays a role. Power warn you, don't do that. Then we find out another way to another genre. We find out another genre where this message can be safely communicated. So one genre is not self-reliant, not complete by itself. So that kind of a thing also is there. So generic, still, I don't know why it happens, still folklore is after this genre. Why? We have to answer this question. Then, now this is about data and other thing and this one. And as far as the activism is concerned, during this period, that preservation and dissemination for fear of extinction, that was happened, that have been happening in the field of folklore. Everybody wanted to preserve, lamenting. Yeah, we are losing everything. That is why our folklorists in India are also doing the same. We want to preserve. Why? If you accept the idea that this folklore is not static, what folklore that we get today is a text, present text. It's a present text after so many changes it adopted during its long travel from earlier days to earlier generation to this generation. Now we are lamenting that we lose this text. Why? No, we had to think about that, and it has to go still longer future. In future, from present it goes to the future, and according to the structural pressure, not only the outside pressure, whether environmental pressure or social pressure or political pressure, any kind of pressure, it gets new text out of that. Then what is the meaning of this for fear of extinction? Why? This is a question that we have to ask ourselves. Why? We reached at a point of time today, at a point of time, traveling through different this cultural trait, and we reached here. So hereafter, it gets new text out of this today's text. It gets so many new texts. That is why folklorism, the idea of folklorism has come. That is why this later, then this Regina Bendek came with the folklorization process. So that we will take them separately. Then folklore out of context. You see that in the last part of this modernism, this postmodernism and modernism, it is in between. There is a era that is 70s and 80s. You get all these things, folklore out of context. Dan Ben Amos was talking about folklore in context, then out of context. So because of the cultural change, social, political, and cultural and economic change, mainly economic change, and political change also is there, folklore wanted to go away from, it has to move, it used to move from its own surroundings, it moves out of the folk to other group. That have been happening. Even today also it is happening. So that is the problem with this America and Europe. Actually, that's Dawson. Dawson wanted to say that it is folklore. No, it can't move outside. Even it can't move from one media to another. That is why he was against this Grimm brothers, because they published this retold and published this folk tale, which is the property of a particular sacred this genre of folklore that is in Germany, and he was against that. So that is why he called us folklore. Not only that, Pilgrim Progress, when somebody wanted to creative work out of this their own folklore, Pilgrim Progress, that's the bestseller on those days. He was against that, because you don't have the right to take a folklore and modify that and give a new product out of that. So he called it's a folklore. It is not law. It is not folklore. It is folklore. So whatever we published, whatever collection that we publish, it is, as far as Lawson is concerned, it is folklore, not part of the folklore, and it cannot come under the purview of folklore studies. That was his argument. He was totally against that. Then, in that way, this argument of Dan Ben Amos also, it is somewhat related to that, but he never talked about these things. But he was telling that folklore in context, it should be in context, then it gets, but it has a connotation that it is moving outside, and that also has a context in that gives this meaning to that. So his theoretical stand has a relevance in this folklorism also. If it goes outside also, we can explain that folklore, that situation also with the definition of Dan Ben Amos, that if and when it goes outside, it loses its context, and it wanted to have a new context, accept that context, and modify itself, appropriate itself according to that context, and it becomes folklorism. That in that way we can, I think we had to explain Dan Ben Amos. So this definition is not out of context in this idea comes, I think. So folklore in out of context. So Hans Moser, when he says that it is folklorismus, the same idea, but it was developed by Regina Bendix, and she told that it's folklorism. And after that, so many ideas came that the process also. Somebody came with the idea that how a particular folklore becomes out of context, and then it becomes a folklorism, and later how it becomes a folklore. So we don't. That also says that we don't have a situation that there is no folklore. Folklore should be there. Because human beings are sharing their habits. As far as human beings are having shared habits, folklore is there. It's a sharing culture. So folklore is there is no. We don't want to fear that folklore. There is a time folklore is nowhere. It won't be there. That is the argument. So folklorization process, any folklore that go out of the context, then it has some problem for time being, but then it accommodate inside that society and appropriate itself by that context, and it is part and parcel of that sharing habit of that particular society, and it becomes part of folklore. So folklorism is then not the end of this folklore, any folklore, but it is a new budding of folklore. We had to look at it in that way, in a developing society. So that is the thing. Then when we consider this activism, as far as activism is concerned, so many organizations established during this period all over the world, because of this fear of extinction. That is why the word preservation is very, very important on those days. Preserve folklore. Now, I will come, I think, later, what is the difference between preservation, conservation, and those things, because anyway, we have to consider that when this right, copyright or patent right or IPR, intellectual property right, we had to discuss on that in relation to folklore. Anyway, we had to come across these ideas. So the problem is that so many organizations has come. Now, as we know that Ford Foundation, Smithsonian Institute, and so many other in Europe also, they have their own these things, but the political power is on those days with America. They wanted to culturally also, they wanted to dominate. Then they pumped the money in that way. They pumped the money to collect folklore and preserve folklore. That kind of so many, in that respect, so many small organizations all over the world had been created, and that was happened in all over the world. Then the problem of interference of international agencies, that I don't want to go in detail here, because there is a session only for that, because I am so particular about that, what happened to folklore today for the last few years, now few decades. How? So anyway, folklore is considered as something regional, something is, as far as Dan Benamos is concerned, is among small group. But it was a serious issue taken by international agencies. Why? We have to answer that question. You know, during the nationalistic, romantic nationalism period, each country, each culture, each folk wanted to preserve their own folklore, and they wanted to keep their own folklore with them and project that project towards the world that we are the people here with our own folklore, because that happened in in Finland, the same thing, no? It is a small country, the smallest country in Europe. And that country was so much work has been done in the field of folklore, and they even created, they collected these traits of Kalevala, variants of Kalevala, and put together and make a epic and gave the status of this national epic. Why? So because this problem is there, that this political system, they are, once upon a time, they were part of Russia, and they wanted to show that to the world that we are great people with a great tradition. That is why they came with so many theories, so many great people, Julius Krohn, Karle Krohn, and so many people, and they were finding out now in search of the traits of not only in this Finland, they worked with I forgot the name, and in collaboration they worked and they published this traits of folktale traits all over the world, and like that they worked a lot. Why? So this I don't want to go in detail this one. It's a political connotation also, interference of international agencies. Then the problem comes: who owns folklore that has its own politics? Who owns folklore? Whose property is folklore? That is a serious question that in this context. Next one. Oh, it is 8:30. Yeah, we are going to stop it. Yeah, then what about the theories in folklore during this period? That is Marxian theory. These communist countries all over the world, they worked a lot on this. They wanted to define folklore, and they want to work in the field of folklore also. Their attitude is something different from the other part of the world. It is the expression of the oppressed. That is their idea. That is their thing. But as far as that is the thing, it is the outcome of this expression. It is an expression of the oppressed. They are against the earlier social system, and they wanted to establish a new system, that is communism. And then what is the function of that folklore then in that context? That means it is instrumental to create a new world, not to preserve that. No, when we are talking other countries all over the world, we are trying to preserve all these such things. This theory, Marxian approach, is different from this, because it is the result of the particular feudal in our country feudal system, or this capitalist system, any kind of system. So to liberate the society from that reality, in no way they can keep these such things in these folklore forms, which is the expression of the oppressed. So that is the right. I don't want to go in detail because we don't have much time. I have to finish this. I think next slide. Let me see, and come back again. I think Kumar. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, it is going to an end. We can. I think we can. The earlier one. Yeah. I think we can finish this yesterday itself within 10 minutes because all these people, you people knowing these things. Yeah. No, the next one. That is one. Are you okay? Okay. Yeah, this is already we finished all these things. Next, this is the last one in this session. No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, we will stop here.
Yeah, we will stop here. It is the last slide, I think, and we can. Yeah, it is the last this one, so we can finish here. We can stop here and go for discussion. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay, sir. Sir. Thank you, Professor Raghavanji.
Hmm.
Now it is open for a discussion. I request all the participants to participate. I think, Professor Raghavanji, Professor Alan Dundas,
Yeah.
in his discussion,
Hmm.
he did see the difference between tradition and the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And he was telling that the culture is the technical term used by the anthropologist,
Hmm.
and tradition is the word used by the literary
Yeah.
scholars.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as far as attitude is concerned, both are same. That's what
Yeah.
he was discussing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In our class, he was telling like that. But whatever he felt, we are not the people to accept everything. No, we can question even Alan Dundas also because the time has changed, and now we are in 2022, and that discussion was in 1999, maybe. Yeah. No, before that, I think. So quarter of a century gone. So we can now we are assessing this one, assessing Dan Benamos and Alan Dundas. So
I think not only that, he was insisting
Hmm.
folklore is with the full of what you call a belief system.
yeah.
So belief system is the criteria for its survival. Like that he was arguing. No, it is for participants. Nobody is coming up. That's why I am only just.
Yeah. What happened to the yeah?
Hmm. Yeah. Why people are so.
Because yesterday, I think our professor
Yeah.
Perumal told that you people are all the same people are talking, they are discussing so much every day. So you had to give room for others. That is why they are not asking questions, I think. Maybe they can also ask these such things because.
They can also ask in their mother.
I do think that may be the reason. Now I really feel sorry why I said that. I should not have told.
Yeah. That is why. That may be the reason.
But people should take it sportively, no? Actually, to encourage others, I said, not to discourage the people who are doing good. We are balancing.
Sir, I want to know one thing. Is there any definition which was defined by the Indian folklorist? Is there any acceptable definition which was introduced by the Indian folklorist? Apart from the any European scholar or American scholar, we want to know the Indian definitions actually.
Yeah, we had so many scholars, LP Vidyarthi, and so many people on those days, and all over India, who were working, fascinated by this folklore and this living culture, as especially this romantic nationalism also, because the time of it started with at the time of independence movement, and after that also during this state, when we got independence, we wanted to build our own nation, and we want that also made them to say that we have our own culture and other things. So that is why they wanted to show it like that, no. But I don't know whether any scholar gave a fine definition for folklore, because we don't want to blame them, because they were not so considered. No, they never considered it as a part of this strict academic discipline, as part of their patriotism, their attitude towards their own culture, their affinity with their own culture, which is slowly moving towards vanishing out. Then they wanted to explain that, preserve that somewhere. That is why what happened even today also, we didn't have as far as folklore is concerned, we didn't have our own way of understanding folklore. Understanding means not defining folklore, make it as a discipline. As a matter of fact, it is like this, as I part of this Renaissance or modern this this Renaissance. They wanted to collect this, preserve that, and they are proud of that their own tradition, and they're right on that, and it is something like that. No, it is even they didn't write record the same thing, the reality, but they, in their own way, their own impression. Actually, when we look into the folklore studies that have been going on for the last 1 century in India, it is an impression, not a serious studies, but it's an impression of the scholars on folklore, of their own folklore, not others' folklore. They never thought about this folklore as a universal subject or discipline. They wanted to. They are fond of, fascinated by their own culture, their own tradition, and they wanted to express that. That's all. That it never. They wanted to make a move to this, make a discipline. When folklore became a discipline, that first movement was in Mysore University. This his name I forgot. Actually, I was there at that time. He started this folklore department in Mysore University because he went to Pennsylvania, where folklore.
Hamanaik, sir.
Yeah.
Hamanaik.
Hamanaik. He was a good professor. He's very affectionate to me when I was there. And he went to Pennsylvania, and basically he was a linguist and Kannada, this scholar. And he went to Pennsylvania, and he was it happened that he has good knowledge about this such area of yeah. Then he wanted to start as a discipline, as a subject of study in Mysore University, and he started the first department in India that is giving postgraduate course and research also. And he established a very big museum also within 4 or 5 years. Tippeswamy, one man, was there behind that also. So that movement has come from America. And that is why we got this one. Still, what we studied, those who are trained in this line, that what happened to them afterwards? They were also in the other channel, not making a discipline as other disciplines like history or social sciences, like sociology or psychology or philosophy or like that. We never tried. We were telling, whatever we wanted to say about something about our own impression on. That is the main problem with our folklore studies, that it's an impression of the particular person on that particular law, not a theoretical basis or this methodology or anything. The same practice was going on still as today also. That trend is going on in India. So that is the thing. So they never wanted to define folklore in another way. Nobody. I think there is no concrete definition given by anybody in India. They worked a lot. We had to respect them because their work, the whole life is devoted for their work. So many people in each and every state, we can enumerate so many people working in the field, but it was for romantic nationalism, not nationalism, sometimes romantic, this folkism or like that. So we never consider as a separate discipline of its having its own aims and objectives and this data. Okay, that's the reason.
I think Professor Dr. Vadamalai from Tamil, he published a book on folk elements. There he was discussing about the definition of folklore. I think, to my knowledge, that is the only book available in English. It doesn't mean that there is no definition or argument on definitions in regional languages, but unfortunately, due to language gap, we are unable to know what is there in other languages. There are original contributions, and some scholars, they have the the Western scholarship is there, but still we don't know. I think as Dr. Sujay Kumar raised, I think that is our main intention to start this workshop.
Yes.
We would like to know what exactly is going on in all the languages of India. Then only you can think about the you may be able to get an answer for your question.
Yes,
but
sir.
right now, yeah. Okay,
you have
thank
rightly
you.
mentioned. Yes, rightly.
And from Bengal, I think that Sen who published the magazine Folklore, I think Shankar Sen Gupta.
Shankar Sen Gupta.
Yeah. But only thing is, we know him only as a publisher of the folklore. But unfortunately, we did know his own contributions to the field of folklore. Because he has written a lot of books in Bengali. So it's a problem with others. So like that, few scholars are there. Even from K.D. Upadhyaya, even 1920s, he published articles in American Folklore Journal.
Yes.
The only thing is, it's a kind of introducing the Indian folklore to the Westerners.
Yes. Dr. Tushar Chattopadhyay also wrote a lot of books in Bengali language.
Yeah, I think I had to interfere. It's a juncture that.
No, Professor, there are some people. There are some people who would like to ask.
Yeah. Okay. I will answer later. Okay. Anybody?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, sir, for your like very elaborate discussion on specifically on the generic and conceptual word, what is folklore in present time. My question is that can we as folklorists or as a academician in this field can accept the fact that folklore as a data is very dynamic, it keeps on changing, and the way and the more we try to limit it into a definitive constraint, we limit the the possibilities of further like changes that it might acquire within time and space. So can we accept that in future we might like until even now we don't have a definite definition for folklore? So will it continue, or is it very important for us? Because it's a very personal rule that I have in my mind, where I question myself that even if we get a definition of folklore, then only we are going to redefine or differentiate what a folklore is, or how cultural appropriation of some folklore happens in different in different communities. But you know but for now I have a question that if we define folklore today, then will it lose its stance for further changes that we might see in folklore as a performative art or as an artistic communication which is dynamic in nature? Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. This. Yeah. The thing is that we can't restrict anything in this world. It is part of the continuous change. Theoretically, it says that there is a new text has been created out of the earlier text. That means you are developing, you are living. If you are living as a human being who can create new culture, that does is that whether you have created a new text out of it, other text. So that is the actually this living society, living community. So we can't restrict anything because it is but we can do one thing: the direction of change. That is, I think we are going to discuss that later. That the direction, we can't curtail the movement of change. This everlasting thing, that text is being created one after another, and folklore also, new folklore, folklorism, and again folklore, like that it moves. But the thing is that as a subject of study, when you talk about this genre as the data of our own study, we can't propose this because genre has its own definition. Each genre has its own definition, but that definition won't sustain. So genre, as I told earlier, genre itself is not complete by itself. Its roots are inside, interior into other genres. So intergeneric study is needed. Life is not you can't compartmentalize life. Life is comprises of all the things that is in our life. So if you wanted to analyze the life, that is the main problem, life of the particular group, then you have to consider this intergeneric study. Intergeneric, because as I can give so many examples of that also, because if you go to your own culture, you can find out that this the same message. Message is not pure and complete by itself in particular genre. The second part of the other part of the message is in some other genre, and like that, so many genre internet.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
example from like what I
So,
am.
what is the fun in studying that we have been studying in Indian context also? We have been studying genre and explaining and we are telling that it is great and great. What is the fun in that? If you want to understand the particular society, what happens to a particular, even what happens to a particular genre, you have to ask question why. The result is not inside that genre. It will be, most of the cases, it will be out other genres. And sometimes outside the community, outside also. That is called environmental pressure is there. So we have to see like this only. So I think that is the thing. Anyway, we are going to deal with a little seriously in the last part of this one. I think a future of folklore and folkloristics. Yeah.
Sure, sir.
Enough
Thank you.
for the time being. Okay.
There is one more question from Pavitra. He has sent us a message. So her question, her request is to explain more about the contributions of Regina Bendix for folklore in other contexts or second life of folklore.
Yeah. So in this this is a workshop and we have lot of things, and all this folklorism is a small part of that, and occasionally, not accidentally, occasionally I wanted to mention that, and we have no much time to elaborate that. We had to tell so many things about folklorism, and that is relationship with applied folklore sometimes, and so many other things, and with examples from our own culture. So I think we can have another occasion. We get another occasion to do that. Now, within the short period, it is very difficult to make you understand what is folklorism as such. Okay.
Sir?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, if folklore is out of context, then don't you think so it will lose its essence and further misleads to the community identity? Though one way we can say dissemination leads to some extent of preservation of a community, but equally somewhere it will mislead, misinterpret, or misrepresent the community, sir.
Yeah, it happens. So, that is why, when what happens to a folklore, if it is a little bit productive, you see, if a folklore is a little bit productive, then two kinds of changes that it faces. One is commodification by itself. The same community takes some initiative sometimes, The second one is it will take outside, and it's a raw material for some other industry. Not only this the material culture, even idea also, folk idea also, folk knowledge also. Because if you have a knowledge of folklore, and you can create so many products out of that knowledge. So it happens in two ways. Our folklore is getting changed because of these two. All these are because of the present socio-political and economic change that is around us. So that makes us, we don't know how far we can object these such things, and if it is, whether it is needed also is a question. Because that is why we not a spectator for this, but we had to interfere. As an academician, we are not directly activist, but creating ideology and change the view of the people, change the attitude of the people. It can be done by this. That is the duty or responsibility of the academician. As far as our folklorists are concerned, what they are doing actually, they are this, telling that it is sacred, it is glorifying so many things and like that, telling, one day it disappears. Then what to do? That is happening nowadays, even I was telling, and I used to give this example for kinship system. Or we are proud of our kinship system, where each and every individual has its own right and duties, and it was nice, and like that we used to say. What happened to that kinship system today? Yeah, that is folklore. Anthropology also, they are basically they are also doing some academic exercise on that. But as far as folklore is concerned, as a folk, Alan Dennis used to say that a folk in minimal form, that is family. Then it is largest folk is nation, not international. We have no international business as far as folklorists are concerned. We have the smallest, this folk that available in our society is family. That system is getting damaged, for good or bad, I don't know. And we have the largest system, that is nation. So India is having so many villages. Each has its own cultural, there's a folk, as a folk, they have their own identity. And we can study on that, we can preserve, we can do so many things. At the same time, India as a nation, that is the largest folk, comprises all these diverse folk. These such ideas we have to express, and then only one nation can sustain in a good manner. So at the same time, India, we have to consider India as a folk. As far as folklore is concerned, India is the largest folk that comprises of so many geographical and aerial folk have its own identity. We have to consider this both. Then it will be a prosperous country, now a good country. Then only it becomes a good country. Either, we nowadays people used to tell that nation is big, nation is very important. No, as far as folklorists are concerned, this is given by Alan Dennis. Alan Dennis said like this only: the smallest folk that we get in the world is family, because it's a group of people sharing family system. Each family has its own system, and a larger thing, social group, society. That society, community or something in Indian context is community, that is caste. Then caste has its own family system that approved by the caste. You can't deviate from that. So that kind of understanding we have to have. At the same time, India, as far as folklore is concerned, India is the largest thing, largest folk. Whatever come others, what are according to folklore, outside the nation, it is others. We have to consider like that. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Only very few people are interacting.
Not only very, sir.
Yeah. Anyway,
Sir, Professor Finance sir and Professor Bhaktacharya sir, not only few people are interacting, only those who are interacting only showing their face, but the remaining 22 people not even showing their face We are not seeing them at all, who are all attending, only names are there. Really, it is, we are, to whom we are speaking, or Professor Painard's energy, how it is being used, I don't know.
So let us do one thing. Tomorrow onwards,
only 5 people are speaking, only 5 people are showing their face. Then 2 resource persons, organizers showing to who are they, who are so many names, different names. It is invisible community. This is a folk community which is invisible.
Okay. Then we can do one thing, that we can request all the participants to tomorrow onwards, they have to don't mute this video.
If not all, sir, if not all the time, at least once. At the end, or to close,
why
to
not?
close, take attendance, screenshot.
No.
Otherwise,
No.
how do you ensure the interaction?
No.
Really,
if we mute
you
this,
both of you are very great people. You are very soft, sympathetic, concerned people. But had you been in your young age, you would not have allowed these things. Now you are all softest people. Both of you become.
Yeah.
Earlier, you were not this much soft. I know both of you.
You know the new generation, no? Chila Perumal.
Yes.
The new generation.
Yes,
that's
why I'm telling, because
also.
not only I am experiencing here, sir. I am not only this workshop experience. Every day I am experiencing this kind of students. That makes me to speak here like this.
Yeah, we can do one thing. Tomorrow onwards, you have to don't mute your video. You mute only your audio. Then we can identify and ask questions to particular student also. No, why it won't affect this communication system. If you mute, unmute this audio, it will affect the system. Video, right, it won't affect. So everybody has to show their face all the time. We can ask some people and some question, and then it will be more lively. Yeah, why not?
So dear participants, it is not our intention to test you or to put you in trouble, but our intention is only to make you understand what is the problem going on in the field of folklore. So that is why when there are more than 210 people who showed interest on the workshop, who have requested them to send the note why they are interested, and also their experience in the field. It's only to make it, because we are not teaching theories here. We are only just giving a kind of, re-evaluation or evaluation, or what to say, revisit of the this theories. Without a proper background with all these theories, it is very difficult. And that's why we have sorted so many with so many criteria. Still, well, there are some people who are not reacting, means then again we need to think about it. As Professor Raghavan said, I think tomorrow we can take up a kind of open debate only by the participant. If you are not raising any question, the resource persons will put you some questions to answer by individual participant. Either you take this challenge or that challenge, it's left to you. But tomorrow, it is an open debate. And I request all the resource persons to go through the note submitted by the participants, so that it will be much more useful for us also to assess their thinking. Okay. Is there any other questions from the
good evening, sir.
participant?
Sir, good evening, sir.
Please.
This is something related to romantic nationalism in Indian context, sir. Actually, when we come across this Indian national movement, we see some invented traditions. So to what do you call to glorify the past, or to what do you call something like to legitimate the social action in that period. For example, the Ganesh festivals or the Kali Mata festival of Kolkata. So they have been institutionalized, and still the folk are sharing some common practices while celebrating these festivals. And how to see this from folkloristic point of view, sir? These invented traditions.
Yeah, you are talking about the Kali cult,
Yeah,
that
sir.
procession and other jatra and other things. Yeah,
Yeah, sir. As
yeah,
an invented tradition. Yes.
is it an invented tradition?
Yes, sir.
I don't
During the
think so.
nationalistic phase, Lala Lajpat Rai and Bipin Chandra Pal, all these people, they insisted the celebration of these festivals like Ganesh festival, Kali festival, like that. So
Shiva-
they have been institutionalized, you know.
Shivaji festival also, madam.
Yeah, Shivaji festival also.
Yeah, it was there. No, they popularized that. It is
Yeah.
not an invented one.
Yeah.
The text was there, and they popularized the text, and maybe it is taken by all other, as a movement. They wanted to put it in a popularize among the people and get them nationalize some feeling. For that, they make use of that. That's all. But it is not an invented one. As far as that text was there, then Kali was there. Kali got long back, and that ritual was there. As far as my knowledge goes, that ritual was long before. And when this movement has come, they wanted to unite the people. Then they made use of that. That's all. Then later it became this prestige festival of Kolkata, not only Kolkata, Bengal, the whole Bengal. So that happens. That Ganesha festival also.
Yes.
Because that happens. No, we had to study about that also.
Yes.
How a folklore, a text, a regional text get this national level, this one, or a state level, a cultural level, this popularization. That means it gets a new text. So what is behind that? No, I think it is because of purposefully they created a new text out of the older text.
Yes.
That I explained earlier for romantic nationalism.
Yes. Similarly, Draupadi festival celebrated in South India. Yes.
Yeah, South India and Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. That also they. So
yes.
then Tamil Nadu, so many other traits also got prominence during those periods, I think.
Yes. Thank you.
In Kerala, you see it was no, it is not only this romantic nationalism. I think this when you look into this history of Onam festival, it was a regional, not only regional. It was a small place that is in the central Kerala. That is Thirkkakara temple and Onatagara and so many small place that Onam was there once upon a time, and later when it was slowly migrating from that particular area to other area, and when Kerala became a unified state, yes, Malabar and Cochin and Travancore, then they put the status of this state festival, then giving the bonus and so many other things. So that became that's also an interesting thing to be studied by folklorists.
Yes.
Then we had to study that what all traits inside that festival. Usually festival is so many folklore. It's a cluster of so many folklore. That is the definition of festival. Festival comprises of so many folklore forms, so many genres together. Then it is called as a festival.
Yes.
So that festival, which part of that, which are the trait got prominence during this evolution, and which were the trait gone outside, thrown out by the society. That also we have to study. That kind of study we have to do. That instead of that we are now this glorifying Onam. and it is
Yes.
a democratic and so many
Yes.
terminology and like that. That is I think the duty of folklorists is these kind of things and find out the truth.
Yes. And in Telangana, we have this Bonam festival also, which
Yeah,
has
yeah.
been considered as the state festival.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes. Thank you, sir.
yeah.
And also these festivals, they have their own politics behind this.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
Yeah, we have to study all those things. And politics is a main thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if you don't have any other information, I think we can stop. It is
Hello, sir. Rajeshekaran.
Yeah. Rajeshekaran.
Sir, good evening, sir. Sir,
I think Rajeshekaran has raised a question about totem part and what you call epics. So it's just to go.
totem part tells about the story of the deity. Also, Villadichan part, Punnirandal part also discuss about the deity, but they not consider as a totem part. Why it is the same thing? It is a
it is not a question. No, Rajeshekaran, it is a question that come under our purview because it is something other. Anyway, you ask that question, I can answer whatever I know.
Okay.
Because you get this totem patu in your own area, that is in Trivandrum area and all other places, even in North Canara also, South Canara also. So totem patu is a genre that to bring the deity, appease the deity, and bring the deity to the concerned before the concerned shrine. That is actually the objective, the aim of function of that particular epic or ballad. But as far as Villadichan Batu is concerned, the theme is the same, but that is to appease the god, at the same time the people also. It is a kind of this maybe a performance, not a ritualistic performance. Thematically, it is ritual, but as Villadichan Batu is the content of their song is sometimes this deity, but it is mainly meant for appreciation. So it's a performance actually. In some cases, it appeases the god also. That is the main difference between these two.
Okay, sir. The context and function, structure, form, it is different, sir. That is.
Yeah. Villadichan Batu, when you see the Villadichan Batu, not only in Kerala, it is in Tamil Nadu also, the tradition is there. So Villadichan Batu has its own structure, its own function, its own these things. That is why I am telling that Totem Batu has a definite structure that begins like this, and slowly it as far as my study, I studied this Totem Batu, and that is from DT is considered as in third person, and later it begins to refer it as second person, and the last part first person, they become first person. In the last part of the Totem songs, those main singer, he himself become the DT, and he refer himself as I. Okay. That transformation is there. But in Villadichan Batu, it is not like that. They just perform and they elaborate that story of the deity sometimes. That is all.
Both ritualistic ballads, that's why I'm asking.
No, that is not equal. Ritualistic means the context is ritualistic because it is in the premise of that when I was trying, they used to sing. That is also sometimes they tell, in most of the cases they are insisted to supposed to first tell the story of the deity, then they go for some other heroes or somebody from that area, the story that is in Villadichan Batu. So it is a performance.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I think the Villadichan Batu, especially in the Kanyakumari district, they take the episodes from the Isekki. It's another deity there. But later on, as you said, it has developed as a performance now. But how, his question is, why not? When totem part is there and the same qualities are available in the village part also, why not we call it as a totem part? Yeah, totem part, yeah, Bhadrakali part is different with the village part. So there are two different genres.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other question? No, already 9:15.
Sir,
no
I have a
questions?
question, but I can ask this tomorrow.
Okay.
No, today itself, you are welcome,
Okay.
most welcome, because
Sir, yeah, sir, you mentioned about folk life as a generic concept. So there are a lot of things going in my head regarding that because life entails so many things. So can we say that folk life is a larger entity, a concept than folklore?
Yeah, it was a term used by, I think, by American folklores, actually, not British or European. But they differentiate folklore and folk life because Dorson himself used the word folklore and at the same time folk life. That is why he put the title of his book as Folklore and Folk Life. That means folklore is something different from folk life. But after that, a time has come that the subject has developed a little more. There is no difference between folklore and folk life. Folklore means, in his mind, as far as my understanding goes, folklore is the genres available in the particular community. Folk life is more than that. It is not genre. That genre itself is in an action to fulfill the function of the society in their life. Then it is part of the life. Genre is by itself a unit. As far as genre is concerned, it is for a folk song. A folk song is a genre. But when we talk about that folklore and that particular folk song, it has a it interference with the life of the people. Otherwise, it has no meaning. That is why they sing. Why do they sing? So it is a part of their life. So folklore has folk agricultural practice. You say that practice, you can say as a law. But that agriculture practice itself is part of the life of the people. It for the sustaination of the society. It is part of that life. So it is a larger context. We have to say folk life. So that is, these problems are there. Then that is why I wanted to and all the time I am telling about the last class. How many things I can deal with, I don't know. That is why we had to go for another terminology. Not only these Western people can create a terminology. We can also define and develop a discipline and give. If William J. Thoms can give a new term for folklore as folklore, we can also give another term, substitute another term for this, because time has gone, 2 centuries has gone, and everything has changed. There is no folk at all nowadays as we envisaged on those days. So we can change the terminology of that discipline itself. Why not? Perhaps I am going for that also. Trying to. Yeah, approval, that is another thing. We have to do that. It has no meaning nowadays. As UNESCO, what they told is correct. There is no folk as such. The concept of folk in the 19th century or 20th century is not available today. Then lore also not available. Then why this discipline as such? So we had to change the terminology, and we had to give new objectives for this, and accordingly new methodology also needed, and we had to do that. That is revisiting folklore. Actually, that ends with that. Okay, for the betterment of the society, not for our play as a knowledge, this discussing and not for ecstasy. It is for committed social, political, economic work as an academician.
Yeah, I think we will conclude here. Tomorrow, be ready either to raise both to raise question and to answer question.
Yeah.
So both will be there for tomorrow 2 hours, 1 hour for your questions and 1 hour for your answers. Now I request Professor Sujay Kumar Ji to propose a vote of thanks. Is there?
Yes, sir.
Please.
Okay, sir. On behalf of the participants and fossils, I convey my sincere thanks to Professor Raghavan Pioneer and also Professor Bhaktavatsala Reddy and Professor Y. Sudhakar Reddy and Professor A. Chirubilla sir. And I also thanks to all the participants who are participated in the workshop. We have gained a lot of knowledges from this workshop. And finally, once again, I convey my sincere thanks to the Professor Raghavan Pioneer sir for delivering excellent lecture today. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Good
you.
Night.
Good night.
Okay, thank you. We will conclude here. Now, there is a request to resource persons. Sir, please go through the notes submitted by the participants so that it will be in hand for tomorrow's your assessment. Okay, thank you all. Thank you. Hello, Shiv Kumar Ji. Please conclude.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.